We can always learn more about our kids' physical health and what they need. We can create new routines for the home that add more structure. We can figure out better what we should eat and what we should be feeding our kids and how to deal with the ever-changing screens and world of technology, right? It's finally here. Welcome to the very first episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook. My friends, moms, dads, grandmas, anyone who loves a child in their lives, you are in the right place. I'm Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and I have to tell you, I have been running a show, mostly interview show, a little bit of solo episode, some food stuff, called the Healthy Parenting Connector for, it turns out, 5 years. I have been trying to get that show out of like video YouTube format and into a podcast for, I think, 3.5 to 4 years. I actually hit the fall of 2023, and I thought in my head that I had been doing the Healthy Parenting Connector for 3 years. And when I actually looked it up, I said, oh my goodness, I've been doing this since 2018. It's been 5 full years. And we hit episode 200, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I need to get the podcast off the ground because my audience has been asking for this for years. They want me in their ear, so they can take me on the go and listen to all the amazing interview guests that I've had. So here we are, finally in podcast format. I couldn't be more thrilled. I thought I would start out this first episode telling you where I have come from. I've been parenting for 18 actual years, or 54 parenting years if you add up all the ages of all my kids. I have 4 kids, and they're currently 9, 12, 15, and 18. We count by threes, and we just finished birthday season, so they all line up once again. I haven't always been so into the healthy living and the non-toxic living as I am today. I've always been a big lifelong learner. I've always been reading about parenting since the very beginning. And I'm a teacher by trade. I was trained as an elementary educator at Michigan State University. And I started out my parenting like pretty focused. But there's still been a massive transition. So my hope in this very first inaugural episode is that you can draw from my journey, first of all, a little bit of encouragement. And second of all, some tips and some tricks and some little practical steps along the way that you can take with you and try out in your own home. And especially, I want you to take some excitement to listen to the rest of the episode. So again, big welcome to the Healthy Parenting Handbook. It's literally the phrase I've said since the beginning, like, where's the handbook for this? There is no handbook for this. Or I joke to my kids when I say something that maybe they don't like, I say, yeah, that's how it is. I promise it's on page 57 of the parenting handbook. My kids don't know there's no parenting handbook, right? But now there is the Healthy Parenting Handbook from Kids Cook Real Food. And here we are. My beginning, again, was 18 and a half years ago. And the very first thing I searched for when I found out I was expecting our first baby was, what do I eat? Even though I wasn't, a real food person yet, I knew that what I ate would have a huge impact on this tiny growing being. And I discovered the Bradley method, and it said eat 2 eggs a day, etc., and all this protein. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is so hard. That is not my life at all. We were kind of a hamburger helper, bagged salad, bottled dressing kind of couple. That's what, cooking in air quotes was to me at the time. So that began my journey to really inspecting what was going in my mouth and what was going in the mouth of my then little babe after he was born. And I knew that it all counted so much. Some of my early memories from the time of like only having one child, right? I had one kid only for 3 years. I can picture walking around the house with him with those Poison Control Center mystery yuck stickers, right? They have like the green face, making like the yucky face, and you're supposed to put them on the toxic products that the kids are not supposed to drink. So I took my little, probably 2-year-old Paul around our first house and had him put these stickers on all sorts of bottles, right? Under the sinks, in the cupboards, all the cleaning solutions, everything. And we would say, yuck, yuck, no drink, yucky, yuck, yuck. And I think about that now, and I just have to grin because I did not do that with child number 2, child number 3, and child number 4. And it's not because I was too lazy or too busy or too overwhelmed. It's because there aren't really things in our house anymore that are yuck, yucky, yuck, yuck, right? Like almost anything that I use to clean or anything, like anything that we use in this house, it's probably darn close to edible. I don't think I would ever have to call poison control. I wouldn't even know. I don't know where to find their number. It was on the Mr. Yuck stickers way back when, because if the child did drink it, you wanted to be able to call right away. So that, to me, that's like a huge transformation. I can also picture, and I have photos of it, when we moved, I had now started writing at kitchenstewardship.com, and I was teaching families to stay healthy without going crazy and take baby steps. And, we were working on reducing the toxins in our lives. And when we moved out of our starter home and into our today home, which I believe is our forever home, I gave away 4 full boxes of stuff that I would no longer use, like shampoos, cleaners, toothpastes, so many things. I mean, I just kind of offered them to neighbors. I said, listen, like, don't feel like you have to take this, but if you're using it anyway, this is free to you. And I hate the idea of throwing it away, but I realized that I hadn't touched them, most of those items in years. And so why move them, right? So to me, that was just like the seal on the package of this massive transformation when it came to personal products and cleaning products. Now when it comes to food, again, with my first child, Paul, he ate a lot of Cheerios and a lot of Puffs as the finger foods. And we started him on rice cereal, just like we were told to, like every parent was told to in the early 2000s, probably still today. He got an M&M when he was potty training, right? We bribed him with food, absolutely. I did start out a little gently, like a little slower on sugar. I remember, kind of a serving of a candy was like 1 or 2. Because he was so little, he just didn't know any better. He didn't know to ask for more. And I still use that strategy. Like a serving of M&Ms is maybe 5 for a 5-year-old. That's what I usually say. Like, 5 for a 5-year-old or 6 for a 6-year-old. And it's great when they're so little because they just don't know to ask for more. Way back then, though, right at the beginning, I did have a very strong distrust of a certain category of food/chemical. And that was artificial sweeteners. And I'm not even sure where this came from. It was just sort of innate in me. I didn't like the taste of Diet Pop, as we say in Michigan, Diet Soda, as most others say. I didn't like the taste, and I had a very strong distrust of all artificial sweeteners. And I knew that was going to be the one thing I would never let my kids eat, right? The one thing. And now I've since upped that to 2 things, and MSG is thrown in there. Although I got to say, for sure, my kids have had MSG sometimes because it's a little sneakier. It hides in a lot of other places. But the artificial sweeteners since day one have been an absolute no-no in my family. And at first it was just sort of intuition. And now it is informed, by more research. And really when it comes down to it, one of the biggest reasons that I don't let my kids use artificial sweeteners, although there is a cascading list of evidence-based reasons, the biggest one is that they just haven't been around for quite enough decades for us to know for sure what the impact is of a 3-year-old or 5-year-old or 9-year-old child having daily consumption of artificial sweeteners over an entire lifespan. So I don't want my kids to be the guinea pigs. Sorry, I don't want your kids to be the guinea pigs either. So if that's the first little tip you take from here, ditch the artificial sweeteners and any 0-cal sweetener. We just don't know. And so that was sort of natural in me, that if it's something we don't know about, something we don't understand, something that's very new, I had an initial distrust, which is strange, right? A lot of Americans are like, newer is better and new is progress. And I've always been a little bit of sort of the take the back seat person. And I think that's really informed how I've taught at Kitchen Stewardship and in Kids Cook Real Food as well, because Kids Cook Real Food is a bit of a return to some of those traditional life skills, right? And working together in the kitchen. My journey then, so started with Cheerios and just be pretty standard. I did make my own baby food. I did try to prioritize organic food only for the baby at the time because my food budget was like $350 for all food and personal supplies, from toilet paper to toothpaste. Back when we were early marriage and first kid and even into the second child, that was still our budget. So we could not afford organic for everyone, but I did feed the baby organic. So he had some really strong starts. On the other hand, we still ate a lot of processed foods. And then when baby 2 was born 3 years later, when she was 8 or 9 months old, that was when I began writing at kitchenstewardship.com about staying healthy without going crazy, about balancing your time and your money and your environment and your family's health and nutrition. And because I got into the blogosphere, I thought, oh my gosh, here I thought I had so much to teach. And it turns out I have so much to learn. So we really began a hardcore real food transformation through a process of baby steps at the time. This is back in 2008. So that's a long time ago now. And I went from, largely processed foods, some from scratch, the baby food from scratch, to like buying raw milk, making my own sourdough bread, making my own yogurt, and everything pretty much became from scratch. And that's how I opened up the money in our food budget to be able to afford better quality food, if that makes sense, right? I wasn't paying the factories to make my food, so I had a little bit extra, a little bit of room to buy better quality food, organic or grass-fed and so on. So that's, and what's funny is that as we got busier, the food budget expanded as I got better at my job, and we got busier. The food budget also expanded. And so now we're kind of not quite back to as many processed foods as we were at the beginning. We buy better quality processed foods with cleaner ingredients, but there's still a good bit of processed food in our house. Although we make almost all dinners from scratch. What are you gonna do? I don't know. That's where we are right now. So it's starting to turn back, but I would say the quality is much, much better. When it comes to taking care of my family's health, we've had quite the transformation as well. I did have a natural childbirth. I knew I didn't want antibiotics, if at all possible, during the birth process, but I do think I had to have some. I had to have them. Therefore, Paul got a dose. And Paul, in his first 5 years, probably had at least half a dozen rounds of antibiotics. And that was all I knew at the time. None of my other children have ever had a single round of antibiotics. And I do kind of wave that as a flag. I'm really, really proud of that. And we've never put a kid at risk just to like I don't want to stick to my streak and make it to the end and have a kid who's really sick. No, we make really informed decisions. But I'm really proud that I've been able to learn so much about health and about natural remedies and about waiting and asking questions of my doctors over those years that we've really transformed completely. Not completely, because I was always a question asker. I was always a little bit out of the mainstream, but I feel like I can hardly even see the mainstream from where we stand now. I definitely dabbled in natural remedies way back at the beginning. I would get on Twitter. I'm not even on Twitter/X anymore, but I would get on Twitter and ask people, what do I do for this? And I would take my advice from Twitter. I don't know. It probably wasn't the smartest way to go, but in the end, it worked. I have quite a large, we'll call it apothecary, in my house now of herbal remedies and homeopathic remedies and essential oils and lots of different ways to treat what happens, to treat the little ills that come our way in a family of 6. So we have not had antibiotics since then. I have filled some antibiotic prescriptions. We've had them at the ready in case things didn't go well, but we have not used them for anyone in the family since then. So that's crazy and good, and I kind of feel great being Dr. Mom at this point. One of the later steps in our process of transformation was the legacy piece, was passing it on. Right, so I got to the point where we had good habits. We were eating from scratch. We were avoiding most, prescription and over-the-counter medications. We were figuring out how to deal with our own health at home. We were improving our immune system. Right, we were doing lots of things. But the one thing I had not done by the time Paul was 10 and my youngest Gabe was an infant was figure out how to pass that on in the form of actual knowledge instead of just routines. Right? So I'm really big on building routines and building habits, and that's what's going to sustain our kids as they go into adulthood, right? What we eat, how we eat, and that we sit down for family dinners, and how we treat the earth and how we treat one another. Huge on that. But my kids, until that point, did not have the actual skills to cook from scratch to continue those routines and habits that we had laid down. So in 2015-16 is when I decided, oh my goodness, I've got to teach my kids to cook. And I did it in a really structured, curricular way, being a teacher. And I knew that other moms would need this too, because for the last 6 to 7 years at Kitchen Stewardship, I heard that same story a lot. And people would say, Katie, I really want to be healthy, but I don't even know how to cook, right? It's a huge mountain to climb. And I thought, if we aren't comfortable in the kitchen as a general generation of parents, we certainly are not inviting our kids in, because no one wants to have their kids watch them be uncomfortable, right? We can't pass on what we don't know. So that's where the Kids Cook Real Food e-course originated, is I knew other moms would love to have a little help without having to think through it, to get their kids in the kitchen too and pass on that legacy of healthy living so that the kids can continue it when they leave home. And of course, as I'm talking to parents now about this new passion and this new mission of mine and teaching kids to cook, I realized that there wasn't a real pain point. Yeah, people kind of wanted to do it, but it wasn't a real pain point in like a widespread kind of mainstream place, because moms were not laying awake at night going, oh, I just don't know how to teach my kids to cook. This is such a problem. It wasn't a thing. So I always said, gosh, I have to start at square -1 to convince them first that they need to teach their kids to cook, and then help them out with our course. And I realized that there is a very related pain point that maybe I could speak into. And that one was picky eating. That moms really are kind of staying up at night or worrying in their anxiety state, thinking, oh, my child is not eating well. What if they don't grow big enough? What if their, academics are stunted? What if, right? We do legit worry about our kids not eating a wide, comprehensive, varied diet. So that's when I started creating, it started out as just a 1-hour webinar called Raising Adventurous Eaters. And I used, my strategies as a parent that I learned from other parenting experts that I tried in the laboratory of my own kitchen and my own dining room table. And kind of drawing upon as well my education background. And so I was starting to teach parents just little bits and pieces, right, about how to raise an adventurous eater, how to widen our kids' palates in a very respectful way. And it turned out that is a really good way to invite people into my world, to invite people into, maybe let's talk also about teaching kids to cook and about raising healthy kids and all these experts that I get to pull together in the Healthy Parenting Connector, now the Healthy Parenting Handbook. And so I actually went and got trained in the SOS approach to feeding. That was really cool. That grew out of this space as well. This exact, Healthy Parenting Handbook started as the Healthy Parenting Connector. And one of the most fascinating interview guests I've ever had. We actually had an 1 hour and 15-minute interview. It's the only time I've ever just gone so long that I had to chop it into 2 episodes. This was Dr. Kay Toomey, and she's the founder of the SOS approach. And even though I'm not a practitioner, a therapist, or someone who should be taking her training, she invited me to take it as her guest. I mean, I still had to pay for it, but people like me who are just educators don't get to take that training, but she let me do it, which was so cool. And so now I'm able to so much better teach my readers and my community about solving the picky eating problem. And that's what we do through the No More Picky Eating Challenge. We do through our Pep Club, the Picky Eating Playbook. I have a TEDx talk now on picky eating and how it's not about the food. And that's all just been an incredible journey. And it started with me asking questions. Started with me being a little tiny bit countercultural and just having some intuition that everything that we were being fed, pun intended, by the media and the government regulations and recommendations wasn't maybe exactly right. And we've stayed in that countercultural space as a family. We've come a long way, right? Those baby steps, doing 1 or 2 new things a week, really adds up over time. It really adds up, and your family life will be completely different if you just do one thing at a time. Now, we are such a countercultural family. I feel like almost nothing we do is, quote, normal, right? Our lunches look different. The boxes we put our lunches into look different. We bike to school instead of putting our kid on the bus, except in the middle of winter when we just can't bike through the snow here in Michigan. We've always had like metal water bottles way back before bringing your own water bottle was cool. That was what we did. We go to church while the rest of the world goes golfing or goes to a football game. We ask questions of our doctors all the time. And sometimes we say no to their recommendations, or let's wait to their recommendations. That is so countercultural. We know we've pretty strict screen boundaries. Our kids have to wait a very long time before they have a phone. My 3rd child is 12 right now, 7th grade. no phone yet. Nope, no phone yet. My kids have gotten phones at, I believe, age 15 and 14, maybe 13. My daughter got her phone a little bit earlier because she made a very good pitch that she babysits at homes where there are no phones. And we started with, the True-Me phone that was all pretty locked tightly so that there wasn't much she could do. And still, she doesn't have social media here at age 15. So, we take screens very slowly. We have very strict sleep boundaries because we know what's good for our kids, right? Your lesson here is that those baby steps and creating boundaries based on knowledge and education make a huge, huge difference. In the middle of all of that journey, personal and professional, I was doing all these interviews, like about 150 interviews on the Healthy Parenting Connector show. And I just kept learning so much. So here are a couple more tidbits that you can walk away with. One example of where I actually changed my thinking and changed my teaching based on an interview was that I used to teach the concept of a no thank you bite, right? In that old Raising Adventurous Eaters webinar, that you should give your kid a bite and call it the no thank you bite, and they can say no thank you. And I was taught, I believe it was Dr. K. Toomey, in fact, that is actually like setting the brain for the negative, and you should never call it a no thank you bite. I was like, oh my goodness, okay, I didn't know that. And so I now changed it to a taster bite or an experience bite. I interviewed an Olympic gold medalist, Shannon Miller, and we were talking about family dinner conversation, and she shared the way that she structures conversation with her kids. And she doesn't call it the 3 L's, but I sort of took what she said and massaged it a little bit into what we now call the 3 L's. When did you laugh today? What did you learn? And how did you love someone else? And the Kimball family has used that dozens, if not hundreds of times at family dinner. And I've been able to share it, with my community. And that stemmed out of just one little interview. A couple other things that have changed are screen posture, right? Holding those phones up so that our chins aren't going down. I always tell my kids, if your phone or your screen, right, your tablet or your phone is touching yourself, is touching your belly, it's too close. At the very least, get it away from your belly, and that's going to help your neck and shoulder posture and feeling your whole life. We've had a huge journey on dessert, okay? Huge journey. And then I've taken these little steps based on some of the interviews that I've done. Again, I do the interviews for you, I promise, but I also do them for myself because I get to be there for every single one, right? And I learn so much. So our dessert transformation. Paul, my first child, had probably his first candy, like his first actual straight sugar at age 15 months. Leah, child number 2, hit Halloween when she would have been about 16 or 17 months. So a little bit older. She had her first candy then, and boy, did she love it. She just put the candy in her mouth and looked up at me and went, oh, candy. She'd run around the whole week after that first candy experience going, nanny, nanny, nanny. That was how candy came out of her mouth. She was so excited about it. Third child, I believe John was 2 before he had candy. And my fourth child, Gabriel, was 3 years old before he had candy or really any sugary treat. So we just kind of like extended. The more we know, the more we wait on that. And it's not about restriction. At that point, it's just about ignorance is bliss. And if they don't know it's there, they don't know what they're missing. So they don't even know that they're restricted. Because I did know, and I do know now, that full-on restriction of a food tends to unfortunately create desire and craving. And we want to make sure we don't completely do that. Kids need to be able to encounter foods, even those that we maybe don't want them to eat, to have a healthy relationship with all food. So we've shifted that a lot. We've had to do a lot of grandparent training, like, no guys, no, they really don't need candy yet. We had funny little names for dessert. When Gabe was little, all the big kids would call it a D or a P or a pig. Like, he would kind of start to figure it out, and then we'd have to shift what we called dessert so that he didn't know it existed yet. And I don't even remember, to be honest, if we had or what kind of restrictions we might have had or boundaries on Paul and Leah for desserts when they were little. Eventually, we started with 1 dessert a day at some point, but it was still always like, you have to eat your dinner. You have to have a good dinner or a good lunch before you can have your 1 dessert a day. And then, I did a couple interviews where people talked about how if we put that dessert at the end of the meal, it's like a trophy, right? And we have to get through the drudgery of the meal in order to get to the trophy of the dessert. And I thought, oh my goodness, that resonates with me so much. It makes so much sense. That's in fact exactly how I describe it now thanks to my interview guests who are amazing and have been amazing. And so I started, Gabe was probably 4 when we started 1 dessert a day, but you can have it anytime you want. So my other 3 older kids, right? So they would be like 7, 10, and 13. They already had their habits pretty ingrained. So most of the time they would keep their dessert after dinner just because that's where it always had been. Sometimes they might have it at snack or after lunch. But Gabe at age 4, for about 2 months, he had his dessert at breakfast every single day. And I was like, this is bonkers. I think this is a good decision to let them just choose the timing and not have to be contingent upon finishing a meal. But this is starting to feel bonkers. And then it finally started to sink into him that if he had his dessert at breakfast, then he didn't get any desserts the rest of the day. And if we had something fun, like a birthday or walk into the ice cream shop in the summer, he would like miss out. So it really taught him to budget his dessert, and he had to kind of ask questions and figure out what else might be happening in the day. That's really high executive functioning for a 4-year-old, which is probably why it took him 2 months. And we kind of talked him through that, but it was hilarious to watch. And Gabe is still at age 9, the one who kind of moves his dessert around more than most of the other kids. Leah doesn't really like desserts, to tell you the truth. And the other 2 kids, it's after dinner. They're just are still in that habit. But the next shift, of course, was once kids are in junior high and high school, that 1 dessert a day is not really a fair or sustainable rule. It's not really something I can enforce. So we've shifted 2 of our kids away from that. They kind of make their own dessert choices. And of course, John is 12, 7th grade. So we're about to figure out again, I don't even remember how we do it. We're about to figure out again kind of how to shift him out of that and release those apron strings and release that responsibility gradually so that he's making all his own dessert or sweet treat or whatever you want to call it decisions. So that means Gabe is going to be the only one with the 1 dessert rule. And I'm looking to make sure he can't hear me because it's going to be really important, I think, that he doesn't know that everyone else has aged out because he'll be exceptionally jealous and he will not like that much at all. You can tell that I'm open to learning, right? As much as I know what I know, and I know that certain things are good for kids, I'm always open to be told that I'm wrong. And I will change my teaching and I will change what I do if and when I figure out that I'm actually wrong. So I think that's a really, really important point of view, perspective to take as parents, to have that flexible thinking and that growth mindset that we can always learn more, even if it means we have to change the routines or structures or strategies that we've been using as a parent in our family. And that, my friends, is why the Healthy Parenting Handbook exists. All right? There is no end to what we need to learn about. There's no end for our potential growth as a parent. Even if you have, 54 total parenting years, which is what I've got when I count it up. I see listening to podcasts like this one as a form of professional development as parents, right? We can always learn more about our kids' physical health and what they need. We can create new routines for the home that add more structure and bring us smoothness to our day. We can figure out better what maybe we should eat and what we should be feeding our kids and how to deal with the ever-changing screens and world of technology, right? Some other topics that we'll talk about in the Healthy Parenting Handbook include addictions and trauma, stress, parenting practices and discipline, and special situations that can make it trickier for life at home, like ADHD, autism, sensory sensitivities, highly sensitive kids, anxiety, depression, picky eating, even middle school. That's a whole category in and of itself. We talk about life skills and careers, future goals, family dinners, finances, grocery, organization, the list goes on. Friends, you know that parenting is the hardest job in the world. Running a household while parenting is so difficult, so worthwhile, right? So worth it. But we wear a lot of hats. And at the Healthy Parenting Handbook Podcast, I want to help you feel better about all the hats you put on and be able to more quickly switch them and smooth out what you do in your day and smooth out the way you parent. Life brings a lot along the way, so we need a lot of pages in our Healthy Parenting Handbook to help us navigate day to day. As we move forward, I hope you are already looking forward to episode 2. Episode 2 is going to be an old Healthy Parenting Connector interview with Dr. Elisa Song. She is a traditionally trained MD who has also done a lot of holistic certification. And she talks about what kids should eat. Okay, you can look forward to that next time. And I think what you're going to love about this is that anytime a holistically trained MD speaks about nutrition, like, first of all, you know that it's going to be really science-based and really just good and important and correct. And the fun thing is this interview is probably 4 to 5 years old. And so the nutrition stuff hasn't changed too much. I mean, yes, we continue to learn more about what we should eat, but the basic nutrition hasn't changed much. But Dr. Song will talk about some of the foods that kids do eat and the foods that were popular back then. And of course, those will have shifted a little bit to other kinds of highly processed foods. If she and I had that same interview today, I'm sure she would talk about Takis, which are those chips, right? I think they're a chip. Anyway, Dr. Song was one of our Life Skills Now summer camp leaders this year in 2023, and she did a little session for kids about how food affects our gut bacteria, and she talked about Takis. So I have no doubt that those would have been in our interview if it was filmed today. You can definitely look forward to Dr. Song. You will hear throughout the Healthy Parenting Handbook episodes, you'll hear some, probably about 70 to 80% will be Healthy Parenting Connector episodes, right? So we're talking MDs, nutritionists, dietitians, psychologists, counselors, best-selling book authors, parenting experts, picky eating experts. The list goes on and on and on. And I'm just so thrilled to finally be able to repackage those into a way that you can just take them along with you in your ear. We'll also have solo episodes like this one from me. Usually not as much storytelling. It'll be a little more teaching and a little more meat. Some of those will be old, some will be new. And of course, I can't stop interviewing people. One of the favorite parts of my week, of the job I do now, is getting on these interviews. I love being interviewed and I love interviewing. It fills me up. So every time I meet someone in person or online and I think, oh, yes, like they have information that my community needs. And I say, hey, do you want to do an interview? Do you want to be on my show? So that's why I say, maybe 70 to 80% will be the old Healthy Parenting Connector episodes, because the rest will be brand new solo episodes and interviews that I just can't wait to bring to you. I am definitely hoping that today you gained a few practical nuggets from my story, and if nothing else, that you feel some camaraderie, right? And that you see some hope and some encouragement that truly, truly, the baby steps can make a difference. What's your next baby step? My friends, your next baby step is to subscribe to the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast, because you do not want to miss a single episode. And of course, people always say, right? Podcast hosts always say, leave a review, because that helps other people find us. You can find us on YouTube, on iTunes, wherever podcasts are shared. And we'll also begin a shorts channel where you can just find really quick little nuggets from myself and from our guests on the Shorts YouTube channel. That is it for me for this very first inaugural episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook Podcast. For the first time, I'm Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and this has been your first bite of the Healthy Parenting Handbook.